Prior to going to Vietnam, my only real knowledge of it, to be honest with you, was of the war, what had happened. It was something I was very interested in, and other than the few weeks prior to the trip, I had no real knowledge of the environmental concerns that the Mekong was facing until I started doing research. Once we got into the Delta, we were looking for stories, we were looking for people, we were looking for things that were related to the water.
I knew because of the nature of the Mekong Delta, because of how much water there was, that we were likely to find people who were heavily reliant on water or find that water played a large part in people's lives. But environmentally speaking, we really had no idea what to expect. What we found in Vietnam is that they were able to harness the power of the Mekong by digging this series of irrigation canals, which allowed them to have more productive farmlands than any of its neighboring countries. And unfortunately, when you have an ecosystem that is so tied together because of these canals, when they apply agrochemicals to their crops, that filters down into the river water, and then everyone who's downstream of those farms has to deal with polluted water.
We came across a family of three, an 80-odd-year-old blind woman and her daughter and her daughter, so 3 generations that depend on this river. When we met them, they had no access to clean drinking water. The water that was 20 meters from their front doorstep was polluted with chemicals. They tried to bathe, there were rashes, they got sick if they drank it, but because of their family's circumstance, they're unable to afford the clean drinking water.
They had no real choice. So it was quite intense to realize that this agricultural productivity was poisoning the water for people who depended on it to survive.
Ta không có ít xịt thuốc á, trên ruộng nó không có chảy ra. Rồi bây giờ người ta thuốc cũng như lúa nó bệnh á, cho thịt thuốc nhiều rồi ta cho nó ra vô á. Còn nó xuống sông mình xài không được. Với uống không được luôn.
One of the most alarming parts of documenting the river in Vietnam was to find that there was no fish, that there was no life in the rivers. There was very little life on the edge of the rivers, minus the people. In fishing villages that were once fishing villages, we found men flying kites that were once fishermen.
So ultimately, what we saw is that river fishing that has traditionally supported people for thousands of years in Vietnam is no longer a realistic source of full-time income. A lot of these people who are so heavily dependent on the water have no idea what they can do to protect it.
I think there needs to be institutions involved in implementing plans that coordinate proper, healthy river programs that are for the people and the environment, because the two live side by side there. And I think trying to fix the people's problems and not fixing the environment's problem is causing a clash.
I think without some real grassroots local action and education about what they can do to protect the Mekong Delta, I think the future is definitely in doubt.